Well, glory be and mercy me, we've done it yet again. Here we are, our daily walk around the graveyard. It's a beautiful day today, guys. Spring, it's right around the corner. You can feel it. It's a crisp sort of feel going on, but the snow is gone. Boy, am I ever looking forward to it. This winter was a hard one. It was a hard winter for lots of reasons and for lots of people. And not being able to go outside and actually enjoy nature and enjoy the wilderness and enjoy the wild, huddling in has made it a lot more difficult. And so what are we talking about today, right? Well, today I took a look at an article that comes out of the CBC, and it's all about how kids across Canada are beginning to head to university and head to schools and head to these kinds of places. And you know what they're being forced to do, right? They're tenting out, they're buying a van and converting the van into a living space to live in because they can't afford rent and they can't afford to go to school, right? These are the kids who are taking that conservative advice, right? You gotta go to school and better yourselves and train yourselves, right? That's how you participate in this capitalist death cult, right? You get a really good skill that the death cult wants to pay you for. That's what you do. So what are these kids doing? They're going to university and they can't afford the rent, so they're tenting out, right? Soon to be assaulted by police officers. I'm sure that's what we do in our society instead of giving these kids any money in order to actually get housing, right? Instead of accommodating, the fact that they need shelter, right? Instead of doing any of that, we like to spend a lot more money to beat people up with cops. So I expect as this story evolves that's kind of going to be the inevitability for a lot of these kids. And then you start thinking about, okay, well, let's actually not be jerks about it, right? Like, it's foolish to do this to a generation of children. You're telling me, you're genuinely telling me that the next generation of surgeons, lawyers, engineers, right, are going to have learned those skills to become members of society at the highest echelons, right? And while they were learning those skills, they were also dealing with homelessness. They were also living in tents and in vans. They were also dealing with the negative situation that has occurred in our housing market. Well, then they're going to suck at it, right? Like, if you make somebody also work at Tim Hortons while they're trying to learn to be a doctor, right? They're going to suck at it. It seems extremely basic and straightforward to me. Meanwhile, other nations are just like, yeah, we're not going to bother even making kids pay for schooling in the first place, right? Schooling is paid for. When they go, there's going to be accommodation for them. Everything's going to be fine, right? Well, what do you think's going to happen there, guys, right? If it's your competitive market, right, and the market decides and all that kind of stuff, and you're saying to your kids, not only do you need to go through the struggle of learning all of this stuff, not only do you need to take on student debt that you then in turn need to pay back to who? The capitalist death cult, of course, but now you have to do all of that while being homeless. It's an absolute total recipe for complete disaster. Like, I don't know how we can see it as anything but. And of course, our society is so backwards and so degenerate that we will say stuff like, oh, look at those kids. They're really pulling up their bootstraps and really getting her done. Really grinding into the mindset, right? The grind set. And then what's going to happen to these kids, right? These homeless kids that are trying to learn the skills in order to propel our society forward as we do everything we can to destroy their lives. Well, what's going to happen to the vast majority of these kids, right? They're going to graduate from the school if they can get the job at the end of it, which, given the history of how the system works, at least 25% of them won't, right? So 1 in 4 of them are going to go through this absurdist process, and they're going to not get the job in the end of it. But even the ones that do, right? Well, they're not going to be able to buy houses. They're not going to be able to get any of this kind of stuff. 90% of the new houses, this is according to Better Dwelling, 90% of the houses that are getting made right now are being bought up by speculators and investors, right? The reason why we're building all of these new houses is so that the rich people can buy them. Very straightforward, very easy way to think about it, right? So you're creating this absurd hardship for people to go through in the first place in order to actually improve themselves to any degree, right? And then once they graduate, what do they get for it? Nothing, right? They get to go work for the capitalist death cult. They get to rent at best, right? And of course, the rent is going to be so ridiculously high and absurd that many of these kids are going to look at it and think to themselves, why did I bother going through any of this in the first place? Why did I bother with this schooling? Why did I bother doing any of this? What was the point? Why did I do it? Right? Many of us have already reached this conclusion, by the way, right? Sometimes people do say to me, well, John, why don't you just go back to school, right? Why don't you just plunge yourself back into student debt, right? A student debt that you have to sell yourself to the capitalist death cult in order to turn around and repay, right? You can't work for yourself. You can't work for the betterment of humanity. You can't do any of that kind of stuff. You've got to go work for some firm or something like this, right? And then in the end, after you grind yourself into all of that, maybe then you can start to pursue something of your own interest. Oh, by the way, the rent is so high and property values are so high that you're not even going to be able to pay any of those in the first place. Why did I do it? Why is anybody doing any of this, right? I feel like at this stage in the game, these kids who are going to these universities and experiencing homelessness while doing it, right? Tenting out, living in vehicles, right? That they're going to look back on that time and be like, why did I do any of that? Why did I do any of that? And then you infuse into the conversation what's going on with climate change, right? So all these kids are going through all of this hardship, the homelessness, the grinding, probably working other jobs just in order to get basic food, safety, these sorts of things. So we're grinding them into all of this, and then they're going to graduate, and then the place is going to fucking burn down, right? Because we're not doing anything meaningful about climate change, right? Emissions are going up. We're doing everything we can to destroy the place and betray these people. So these kids that are doing this, right? We're betraying them. I've said it over and over and over again on this channel. Look, we do not care about our own children. Like, we really, really don't. And it's extremely obvious when you take a look at these kids that are attempting to better their own lives while we're doing everything we can to destroy the place. And if I were any of these kids' parents, if I were any of these kids' guidance counselors or any of this kind of stuff, the only advice that's left to give to these kids is foment rebellion, organize enormous strikes, organize walkouts, stop participating in this, right? Like, you're at this stage in the game, we're only distracting ourselves to death, right? That's all we're doing now, is we're just distracting ourselves until the apocalypse comes upon us. That's the apocalypse of our own creation. And the abandonment of it. That's the most shocking part, That's the thing that I think about all the time. And that I wish more and more people would actually talk about. And more people would put voice to. And have it loop around. We are abandoning the future generations. Like, it's not a mistake at this point. It's not an error, right? It is a wholesale, full-scale abandonment that we are saying to the younger generation. Sure, things are going to be a hellscape for you, but, we got to get to brunch. It's really important that we move more military troops around. It's really important that we dominate the globe as a hegemonic superpower. It's really important that we increase emissions so that Bubba can get another big giant diesel burning truck, right? It's really important that we maintain this car culture. It's really important that we do all this kind of stuff, when all we would really need to do is stop. But we're not even interested in solving problems for them in the immediate sense. How do I know? Because there are kids attempting to go to school, attempting to improve their lives. And they're doing it while sleeping in tents. We don't care about our own children. We've abandoned them. And if they were wise, they would abandon us back. Alright guys, this is going to be the end of this video. Please like, please share, please subscribe, please tell people I exist. That's the most important one. Sharing it around, telling people I exist, right? The billionaire class is doing everything it can to censor us. The censorship regime is here. Voices like mine are being chased out to the fringes. We are not being listened to, right? As we amuse ourselves to death, the adults in the room are just being shown the door, and the frauds and the con men are the people who have taken over. And we've got to get leftist voices in the conversation. We have to start listening to basic reason. We've lost the thread completely. Always remember, guys, you are a quantum being walking around in quantum energy. The billionaire class is spending hundreds of billions of dollars in the hope that you'll not realize it and stay the good little commodity they need you to be for as long as we have left. Revolt, rebel, repent. Good luck. We're gonna need it.